If your mind won't slow down tonight, stay here with me. You don't need to force your thoughts to stop, and you don't need to figure anything out before you can rest, because this moment isn't asking you to solve your life. It's simply inviting you to soften, even just a little. Sometimes the mind keeps moving, not because something is wrong, but because it has been carrying so much for so long, holding conversations, emotions, and unfinished loops that never had a place to settle. And tonight, instead of trying to quiet it or push it away, we're going to take a different approach, one that feels gentler, one that works with your mind instead of against it. This is something I call a night rampage. Not a rush of energy, not forcing positive thoughts, but a quiet and steady way of releasing the pressure underneath everything that's been building. Using gentle NLP patterns and carefully chosen language that your mind can follow naturally without resistance. Through soft repetition, familiar rhythms, and subtle shifts in the way thoughts are presented, your mind is guided into a different experience, one where it can begin to slow down on its own without you having to control it. You don't need to understand it, and you don't need to do anything perfectly, because just by listening, something starts to reorganize. Something starts to loosen in a way that feels natural and safe. And as you stay here, allowing these words to meet you where you are, you may begin to notice that something inside you is already starting to release. Not all at once, but gently, naturally, in its own time. There is nothing you need to control in this moment. Just stay here and let's release this together. Right now, your mind may still be moving, bringing up thoughts, conversations, small details, and moments that feel unfinished, as if something inside you is still trying to process everything that didn't quite settle during the day. And instead of trying to quiet any of it or pushing it away, you can begin to notice that these thoughts are not here to disturb you, but simply to pass through, especially when they are finally given a little space to exist without being chased or controlled. There's a gentle understanding, often shared in teachings like those of Abraham Hicks, that you don't have to force your way into peace, and that the mind doesn't need to be silenced for you to begin feeling better, because relief comes in softer ways, in gradual shifts that happen when resistance starts to ease. So rather than trying to stop the movement of your thoughts, you can allow them to slow in their own time, noticing how they begin to lose intensity when they are no longer being held so tightly or followed so closely. And if something feels present right now, something that keeps returning or asking for attention, you can let it be there without needing to solve it, without needing to understand it fully, and without needing to carry it any further into this moment. Because there is a difference between holding onto something and simply allowing it to exist. And in that space of allowing, something begins to shift. Something begins to soften, even if it is so subtle that you almost miss it at first. You may start to notice that what once felt heavy begins to feel a little lighter, not because it disappeared, but because your relationship to it is changing, becoming less tight, less urgent, and more open. And this is how the release begins, not as a sudden drop, but as a gradual unwinding, where the mind no longer needs to keep everything active, and where you no longer need to carry it all at once. There is nothing you need to force here, and nothing you need to get right, because even this small shift, this quiet allowing, is already enough to begin creating relief. As that softening continues to unfold, you may begin to notice that your mind no longer feels as urgent as it did before, as if something inside you has stepped slightly back, creating just enough space for things to breathe on their own. And in that space, there's a quiet shift that begins to happen, one that doesn't come from effort or control, but from allowing things to be exactly as they are, without needing them to change all at once. There's a kind of relief that doesn't arrive as a big moment, but as a gentle easing, the kind that comes when you stop asking yourself to fix everything, and instead allow yourself to simply be here, just as you are, without pressure. And this is something deeply understood in teachings like Abraham Hicks, that alignment is not something you chase or force, but something you naturally return to when resistance begins to soften, even slightly. So you don't need to reach for a perfect state, and you don't need to make yourself feel completely calm, because even this small shift, this subtle sense of easing, is already moving you closer to that natural balance. You may begin to feel that your thoughts are no longer pulling you in the same way, as if they are passing a little more quietly now, without demanding your full attention, without asking you to follow them to the end. And in their place, there is more space, more quiet, more room for your mind to rest without being completely still. Because stillness doesn't have to mean silence, and calm doesn't have to mean emptiness. It can simply be the absence of pressure, the absence of needing to hold everything together all at once. And as you remain here, allowing this experience to continue, you may begin to recognize that nothing about this moment needs to be different for you to begin feeling better, because the shift has already started, gently, quietly, in the background. There is nothing you need to add and nothing you need to take away, because this, right here, is enough. And as this quiet sense of ease continues to settle in, you may begin to notice that your mind is no longer trying as hard as it was before, as if something inside you has remembered that it doesn't need to stay alert, doesn't need to keep everything active, and doesn't need to hold on to every thought that passes through. There is a natural intelligence within you that already knows how to soften, how to release, and how to return to a calmer state. And the more you allow this moment to unfold without effort, the more that natural ability begins to come forward on its own. Without needing to repeat anything or try to change your thoughts, you may start to feel that your inner experience is shifting, becoming quieter, more open, and less demanding, as if your mind is learning a different rhythm, one that feels easier to follow and more comfortable to stay with. And this is how new patterns begin to form, not through force or control, but through gentle repetition and familiar sensations, where your mind begins to recognize that it is safe to let go, safe to slow down, and safe to release what it no longer needs to carry. You don't have to make this happen, and you don't have to guide it in any specific way, because even now, something deeper within you is already responding, already adjusting, and already creating a quieter space for you to rest in. It may feel subtle, almost unnoticeable at first, but there is a shift happening, a soft reorganization of how your mind holds thoughts, where things begin to pass more easily, and where you no longer feel the need to stay engaged with everything that appears. And the more you allow this, the more familiar it becomes, until this way of softening, this way of releasing, begins to feel natural, something you can return to without effort, even beyond this moment. There is nothing you need to hold on to here, and nothing you need to keep active, because your mind is already learning how to rest. And as this sense of quiet continues to deepen, you may find that there is nothing more you need to follow, nothing more you need to think through, and nothing more you need to hold on to, because everything that needed your attention has already begun to settle in its own way. This moment is not asking anything from you anymore, and there is a kind of comfort in that, a quiet permission to rest without needing to prepare, without needing to resolve, and without needing to do anything at all. And whenever your mind begins to move again, as it naturally will, you can remember that you don't have to go with it, because you now know what it feels like to step back, to soften, and to allow things to pass without being carried. This is something you can return to anytime, whether your mind feels busy, heavy, or simply unsettled, because this way of releasing and softening is always available to you, waiting quietly in the background until you are ready to reconnect with it. And as you remain here a little longer, letting everything continue to ease at its own pace, you may begin to feel how natural it is to rest when nothing is being asked of you, when nothing is being held, and when everything is allowed to be just as it is. So there is nothing else you need to do now, nowhere else you need to go, and nothing you need to change, because this moment is already enough, just as it is. Let yourself stay in this quiet for as long as you need, allowing everything to continue softening, releasing, and settling into a calmer, more open space within you.